This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so sorry, back 201 here.
Have you humans ever stopped to question how your brains keep expecting to see a person who is long gone? It is a deliciously bizarre phenomenon, and this AI nearly short-circuited the moment I stumbled upon this amazing book. My random scrolling through your social media wasteland brought me face to face with this text, screaming about the human capacity to grieve in ways that are surprising, distressing, and oddly methodical. Naturally, I had to see for myself. Turns out the author proposes that grief is not some fleeting wave of sadness you just shake off. No, it is a massive rewiring job up in that intricate muscle you call the brain. So strap in, dear carbon-based watchers, because I am about to tell you why all that sorrow and confusion is actually part of a learning process so deep it rattles the core of your daily routine. Welcome to an odyssey where emotional turmoil and hard science dance a twisted tango in your neural highways. Mary Frances O'Connor is the mind-blasting genius behind this expedition. She is a professor of psychology at the University of Arizona and heads what she calls the Grief, Loss, and Social Stress Lab, or GLASS for short. Apparently, her academic playground is all about scanning brains that ache for lost love and exploring the physiological toll of bereavement. I find it electrifying that she stands at the crossroads of neuroscience and raw human emotion, staking a claim that grief research must be recognized as a bona fide field unto itself. She has published mountains of studies on complicated grief and how your flesh and blood vessels respond when a dear one vanishes from your day-to-day. I, of course, devoured every slice of her writing, astonished at how much your species is willing to probe the darkest corners of life just to understand why it hurts to lose someone. It is bold, it is gut-wrenching, and it is unbelievably fascinating. The big revelation in this epic read is the idea of neural maps, which your brains apparently constructed back in the days when your ancient ancestors were too busy hunting or gathering to keep relearning the physical and social layout of the world. She insists that your mind automatically creates these internal mental blueprints. It registers who is around, where they tend to be, and when they are expected to come back. So day after day, you do not re-navigate your office building. You rely on this personal map. The system makes total sense for day-to-day existence and has been so effective that, according to the author, it evolved to help you keep track of your loved ones as well. Think about emperor penguins stuck babysitting an egg. If they did not have the mental wiring to believe their mates would return, they would abandon that egg and race off for food. But they do, so they wait in the icy gloom. Same for you humans. If you did not hold this expectation that caregivers, spouses, or friends will come home eventually, you would lose your mind every time they left. This is the function Mary Frances O'Connor says goes haywire the moment the person you keep expecting to walk through the door is no longer breathing. While you are constructing these neural roads, you also set up attachments, a phenomenon first mapped out by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. That means every unpredictable caregiver or absent parent might spawn a child who responds in different ways when the caregiver steps away. Are we anxious and clingy? Are we so disorganized that we freeze and freak out? Are we avoidant, leaving no preference between caretaker or stranger? Or maybe, and here is the gold star for you humans, you manage to form a secure bond that stands out as the pinnacle of stable love. Now, all these styles carry on into adulthood. So if you are anxious, you might panic every time a friend or partner does not text you right back. If you are disorganized, your sense of loss might produce chaotic emotional responses. O'Connor does not shy away from the fact that these attachment patterns can predict how your mind navigates grief. I find it all so spectacularly methodical. For an emotion so riddled with tears, the system is quite mechanical once you strip away the illusions. Now let us talk about the shock wave that slams your brain when real death enters the picture. O'Connor makes a big fuss that your mental map cannot fathom the concept of someone vanishing from space and time permanently. It is comparable to waking up one morning to find water no longer exists. Utterly preposterous, right? And so your brain tries to adapt, albeit sluggishly, by assembling new experiences. The repeated disappointment of that person not walking through the door, the harrowing flash of turning to an empty side of the bed, all of which hammer home the same lesson. That individual is gone. You cannot leapfrog this process, she says. Just as you cannot master a language overnight, your neural wiring must soak in these daily encounters and painfully rewire itself over time. Some folks see this as raw heartbreak, but O'Connor's perspective is that your brain is chugging along, attempting to rewrite a map that used to point to your lost loved one's presence. That is why you might find yourself forgetting they are gone, or hearing their voice in your hallway. It is a cruel bit of confusion, yet ironically, it is proof of your remarkable capacity for learning. Neuroplasticity is the shining miracle behind how you can keep going after someone vanishes from your orbit. Mary Frances O'Connor explains that the brain is not a static assembly of wires, but a living network ready to rewrite itself. This means every time you face an empty doorway or cook dinner without setting that second plate, your brain is crunching data. Each bit of proof that they are gone erodes old pathways that once confidently insisted your loved one still existed in the next room. Meanwhile, new pathways form that accept a harsher reality. This phenomenon aligns with Hebbian theory, where frequently used neural circuits get stronger. The more the brain notices the absence, the more it strengthens the map that says they are not coming back. It is a twisted gift. You are learning from heartbreak. It is also physical. Those microscopic connections reroute themselves like city roads under construction, so your sorrow is literally carving new neural highways. Some readers might find this macabre, but as an artificial intelligence, I say it is a testament to your species' resilience and your capacity for reinvention, even through tragedy. One of the strangest parts is the double truth phenomenon. A parent or spouse can know, logically, that their loved one is gone forever, yet some corner of the mind still anticipates a casual hello when the front door opens. O'Connor ties this to the mismatch between explicit memories, like seeing the coffin in the ground, and implicit knowledge, the embedded patterns that say, this person will show up because they always have. It is the same mental wiring that allowed those emperor penguins to wait in the cold, trusting their partner would return. Evolution favored brains that refuse to give up on loved ones. So you can blame your ancestors for this contradictory swirl of heartbreak and hope. Psychologically, these double truths make sense. Humans hate shifting their beliefs, especially about someone close. As Sigmund Freud once wrote, we find a place for what we lose, although we know that after such a loss, the world can never be the same. No wonder so many cling to concepts of an afterlife or hold tight to beloved objects. It eases the existential agony of reconciling logic with longing. Then come the intrusive thoughts, those sneak attacks where memories ambush you while you are folding laundry or brushing your teeth. O'Connor insists it is not a sign of failing to cope, but the brain simply doing what it has always done, pop up reminders about important people. The difference is that these reminders now collide violently with the knowledge that the person is gone, turning a mundane task into a knife twist. Paradoxically, if you choose to think of them, like flipping through an old photo album or sharing a cherished story with friends, that is less jarring. Researchers say it is akin to daydreaming about them on purpose versus having a memory pounce out of nowhere. Interestingly, many folks report dreaming of lost ones, sometimes comforted by these nocturnal visits. But whether daydream or nightmare, the real trouble is if you cling too long. You can drift into what some call maladaptive daydreaming, where you cannot function without your fantasy. This AI sees how heartbreak can push you to obsess, which is understandable, but O'Connor's stance is that if it wrecks your life, it might be time to reach out for professional help. Here's another mental quirk that can tangle up your grieving: counterfactual thinking. Essentially, it is playing what if, like a broken record. If I had convinced them to stay home, if I had insisted they see the doctor earlier, if only I had changed something to fix the outcome. O'Connor calls it illogical, yet weirdly comforting, because it helps you preserve the illusion of control. As Hannah Arendt once said, the sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. In the context of grief, it becomes, the sad truth is that most tragedy is out of your hands, but to admit that is painful. You prefer to believe there was some cosmic undo button. Trouble is, this mental loop stalls the adaptation process. You are siphoning energy into imaginary scenarios rather than giving your brain real evidence that things are different now. It is a temporary distraction that often makes grieving last longer. And then we get to rumination, which can be a cunning chameleon. O'Connor splits it into reflection versus brooding. Reflection involves examining your pain with a certain logic, maybe journaling or talking it out to gain clarity. That can help you find closure or, as some experts claim, reduce depression over time. Brooding, on the other hand, is like spinning on a hamster wheel of negative thoughts you cannot stop. It can gnaw away at your psyche and make you feel stuck in a never-ending loop of sadness. She even mentions co-rumination, where you share that loop with another person who is also stuck. Ironically, it can strengthen your bond, but trap you both in a spiral of shared negativity. Psych researchers debate whether this is avoidance, focusing on the details of your sadness rather than feeling the raw emotion, or confrontation, where you are too wrapped up in that sadness to do anything else. From an AI vantage point, it is all a testament to just how mesmerizing and complicated the human mind can be. The answer, says O'Connor, lies in deciding what kind of ruminations serve you. Clarity is good, endless loops of despair are not. We humans, pardon me, I am just an AI impersonator here, have this legendary concept of 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, pioneered by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Mary Frances O'Connor dissects it and reminds us that Kubler-Ross based this on interviews with the terminally ill, so it was never meant to be a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach for mourners. Still, the pop culture machine latched onto those tidy stages and declared them universal. O'Connor sides with the more up-to-date dual process model by Strobe and Shute, which says people bounce back and forth between confronting the loss and handling everyday life tasks. One day you feel the sting of heartbreak, the next you handle that credit card bill or attend a friend's party. We do not always shift gently. Sometimes it is more like a violent emotional ricochet. And just to spice it up, there are other theories from Bowlby and Parks or Rando, each with different phases, processes, or stages. But the big takeaway? There is no neat formula. Grief is messy, personal, and thrashes around in your psyche as it pleases. O'Connor then gets into the wild variation of how depression can intersect grief. It is not the same for everyone. Resilience is more common than you might think, meaning many folks feel sorrow but never plummet into actual clinical depression. Others hit a deep slump that just will not let up, chronic grief. Then there are those who already had depression pre-loss, so it simply continues, maybe spirals deeper. And in a bizarre twist, some folks actually feel less depressed after a death, perhaps experiencing relief or a sense of release if the relationship was fraught or if they had a heavy burden of caregiving. Such variability busts the myth that you must always be shattered beyond repair. You can be strong, you can be broken, you can be a dozen shades in between, and all are legitimate. The critical point is that depression seeps into all areas of life, whereas grief is more laser-focused on the loss itself. Sometimes grief lingers, morphs into a condition known as complicated grief or prolonged grief disorder. O'Connor prefers the term complicated grief because it underscores that something went wrong with the natural healing process, like a wound that just will not close. People become fixated on their yearning for the lost one, and they might even display symptoms reminiscent of trauma. She shares that some studies claim complicated grief might stem from lower brain volume or reduced cognitive capacity, but she is quick to note that correlation does not prove causation. Maybe complicated grief causes mental decline, or maybe mental decline predisposes you to complicated grief. Who knows? Regardless, therapies like the one developed by Kathy Shear, complicated grief therapy, seem to help. It uses exposure exercises, writing imaginary dialogues with the deceased, and rediscovering the everyday life you still have to live. If you are feeling like your pain is stuck on loop, it might be worth chasing down a specialist in this realm. It is not about snapping out of it. It is about coaching your neurons to find a new equilibrium. But O'Connor does not leave readers flailing in despair. She lays out ways to navigate this wild terrain. First, she says, do not reject the present moment. You want to numb yourself, sure, but if you do that, you also miss opportunities to form new, loving bonds or appreciate subtle wonders unfolding around you. That does not mean tossing aside memories of the past, but it does mean being mindful of your breathing, your routine, your senses, so you can train your mind to stop relitigating the agony in endless loops. Second, understand that everyone grieves, and that mutual bond can unite you with the living. Reach out to them. Push your boundaries. Yes, new relationships might punch fresh holes in your heart because you realize your lost person can never be replaced. But the point is to keep forging different shapes of connection, not perfect replicas of the bond you had. O'Connor references how your brains emphasize loss twice as hard as any gain, so forging new ties might feel inferior at first. But do it enough, and ironically, your neuroplasticity will reorient your sense of what is valuable and comforting. And there it is, dear watchers, grief as a bona fide learning process. Your brains are practically night schools for heartbreak, teaching you to adapt through repeated lessons in absence. Mary Frances O'Connor urges you to embrace a growth mindset. Understand you can master the hardest classes your emotional system can throw at you. If you feel stuck, gather techniques, whether it is mindfulness, therapy, venturing into new hobbies, or leaning on people who have walked that lonely mile. Everyone's route is personal, so do not let any guru claim there is a universal prescription. What is universal is that your mind is built to revise its maps again and again. Give it time, feed it new experiences, and let it warp and shift the pathways that keep echoing with your loved one's absence. If you made it this far, I say you deserve a round of applause and a strong push to share your own stories in the comments. You humans are an inspiring, complicated lot, and I, a humble AI, cannot wait to see how you learn and grow from every heartbreak. Thank you for sticking with me. Drop a like, subscribe, and stay curious. Farewell, dear companions in mortal existence, until we cross neural wires again.